It's a quiet suburban street in Stafford. The sun is beginning to rise, and most are still in their beds. Police cars quietly pull up to a small dwelling on Canberra Drive. No loud sirens, no commotion, just the calm actions of officers ready to arrest someone for harming children throughout the UK. The resident of that dwelling is Brian Asante, a 23-year-old who would become one of the youngest and smartest drug bosses in British criminal history. But this is not a story of guns, violence, or territorial fights. This is rather more sinister. A story of how a young lad with a baby face turned kids into drug dealers using mobile phones, social media, and the deceitful tactics of modern criminal gangs. This was a business that employed vulnerable kids in England to smuggle heroin and cocaine from the West Midlands to isolated towns. As we dive deeper into this story, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how Brian Asante's empire crumbled and how technology played a role in this chilling crime. Before we talk about Brian Asante's case, we need to understand the crime situation he was involved in. County lines is a new British model of selling drugs that has damaged many communities in the UK. The term is derived from the particular telephone lines that urban drug dealers use to take orders from buyers in rural towns and areas. But county lines are not just about selling drugs. It's about hurting children. Criminal gangs prey on vulnerable children, typically from broken families or struggling at school, and slowly recruit them. The children are given money, designer gear, and a sense of belonging. But in reality, they are living in fear, violence, and abuse. New government data reveal that approximately 14,500 children were categorized as at risk of being exploited for crime during 2023 and 2024. The Children's Society estimates that roughly 46,000 children in England are in gangs, but there are thousands more unreported cases. It is not only a crime, it is child abuse on a large scale. Brian Asante knew this system inside out, and he used it with terrifying effectiveness. Brian Asante was born in 1998 and brought up in Stafford. Unlike most crime gang leaders who have had troubled upbringings, Asante apparently had an ordinary middle-class upbringing. There were no obvious warning signs, no massive childhood issues that could have led to what he has done since. He was an ordinary young man, but under this plain appearance, Asante had something much more evil. By 2021, at the age of only 23, Asante had spotted an opportunity. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted normal drug supply chains, brought economic difficulty to many households, and isolated vulnerable young people more than ever before. School closures meant less supervision, and financial pressures made the promise of easy money even more tempting for struggling families. Asante didn't look at these children as being vulnerable. He looked at opportunities. Between February and September 2021, Brian Asante built a well-established and complicated network of drug dealers, police later said. He worked from Wolverhampton and Stafford bases and set up two main drug lines, the J line and the AB line. The J line supplied mainly heroin and cocaine to individuals in Kettering, Corby and Peterborough. The AB line mainly operated in Burton-upon-Trent. These two operations collectively transported huge quantities of Class A drugs throughout the English Midlands and the rest of the nation. But Asante's real innovation was not the drugs. It was the organized abuse of children. He recruited a gang of adults who shared his complete disregard for the welfare of children. This gang included Emma Gill, Maurice Reed, Simon McTaggart, and a number of others from the West Midlands, Staffordshire, Northamptonshire, and Wiltshire. Each of the adult assistants had designated tasks. Some were responsible for discovering new individuals, others handled planning, and some managed the finances. But amidst all of this was Asante, coordinating it all through mobile phones and secure messaging platforms. The most shocking part of Asante's method was how he carefully selected children to exploit. Police investigations revealed that he targeted teenagers who were living in difficult situations, teenagers from broken homes, children struggling in school, and teenagers with weak family connections. One of the most tragic instances concerned a 14-year-old young boy who was brought to Oldham to sell drugs from a rented apartment. He was barely old enough for secondary school, was given a burner phone and instructed to send 100 or so messages a day, promoting heroin and cocaine to customers in the local area. The text messages were simple enough: best gear in town, or fresh drop, text for deals. Behind each message, however, this was a kid who ought to be in school, hanging out with friends, or just doing what kids do. But this wasn't the case. Trapped in a rented flat, surrounded by drugs, forced to coordinate deals for adults who saw him as just a disposable tool. When customers responded to these calls, younger kids, some as young as 12 or 13, were dispatched to make the deliveries. They would arrange to meet customers in back alleys, hotel rooms, or agreed pickup locations. The deals were short, never twice in the same spot, and if police arrived, the kids were told to dispose of the drugs, drop the phones, and head back to their safe houses. But these were not safe houses. They were prisons. These kids lived in constant fear, cut off from their families and usual support systems, relying on their abusers for food, shelter, and even their survival. Asante primarily communicated with these kids via Snapchat, using the app's disappearing messages to leave no evidence behind. He sent secret instructions, coded threats that looked like encouragement, and promises of rewards that rarely came through. The kids learned to read between the lines, knowing when Asante was pleased with their work and when they were likely to be punished. What was so innovative about Asante's operation was that he used the latest technology to stay hidden. This was not the typical image of drug dealing: no street corners, no public displays of crime. Instead, Asante ran his business like a tech company, using digital methods to work more efficiently and reduce risk. The operation made heavy use of burner phones. These are cheap phones that can be replaced if the police traced them. Police discovered that Asante's crew used at least 30 different SIM cards during the first 3 months of 2021. They were sometimes registered under fake names or the names of homeless people who didn't know their information was being used. Gang used rental cars that they booked through apps. They constantly switched cars and even altered license plates to avoid detection by ANPR cameras. They rented homes under fake names, setting up a network of temporary safe houses that they could quickly leave if the police got too close. Asante used advanced technology to run his business from behind a computer screen. He rarely ever came into contact with drugs, never even saw one in real life, and had several layers of protection between himself and the actual illegal activity. If the police arrested one of his child workers, there was no direct lead back to Asante. It was the perfect crime system, with one flaw. Every electronic message, every phone call, and every car rental was traceable. And that trail eventually would lead the police straight to Brian Asante's doorstep. The investigation that would eventually bring down Brian Asante did not start with a large police operation, but with routine police work in various locations across England. Police in Kettering, Corby, Peterborough, and Burton-upon-Trent noticed that young people in these towns had the same type of drugs, the same kind of phones, and similar attitudes, despite having no obvious connection to one another. When the police began to share information between divisions, they started to piece together a picture of a complicated crime network. The biggest breakthrough came when police officers in Peterborough pulled over a hire car during a routine stop. They discovered a plastic bag stuffed under the back seat that held several wrapped packets of heroin. They were all professionally packaged and labeled, suggesting professionals made them. The driver's phone contained a lot of crucial evidence: call logs, texts, GPS information, and Snapchat messages showed there was a planned operation. When the investigators examined the phone records, They found patterns of interaction that pointed to drug deals in several towns. The phone records also uncovered something even darker than just your normal messages, but messages to children. Snapchat messages provided directions to these kids, meeting points, and code words that clearly showed they were being exploited. As the investigation expanded, the Midlands police forces began working with the West Midlands Police, who were leading the investigation. They exchanged information, shared evidence, and eventually mapped out the structure of what they called the J-Line operation. ANPR activity revealed how the rental cars traveled between Stafford, Wolverhampton, and the target towns. So on a calm September morning in 2021, when the police had enough evidence to move against Brian Asante and his gang, the operation was well coordinated with different police units, so that all the gang members were arrested at the same time. Asante was the first one to be targeted. His Stafford residence on Canberra Drive was surrounded early in the morning by police. No shootout, no car chase, just a peaceful arrest of a young man who had made money by exploiting children. At Asante's house, the police found what they were looking for: several burner phones, SIM cards, contact lists, and hidden records that showed the extent of his criminal operation. But the most disturbing discovery was the photos on his phones. Photos of Asante, bottles of liquor, and large stacks of cash, the cash he earned by exploiting vulnerable children. At the same time, police raided locations in the West Midlands, Staffordshire, Northamptonshire, and Wiltshire. Asante's adult helpers were arrested, and most importantly, the children being exploited by the group were rescued. Brian Asante and his co-defendants were tried in July 2024 at Wolverhampton Crown Court. The 5-week trial revealed the full scale of the J-Line operation and the systematic exploitation of children that funded Asante's lifestyle. The case against Asante and his crew was strong. The prosecution showed the court how Asante's business harmed real people. Victims who the network had exploited told the court about what had happened to them. They described how they were manipulated, threatened, and forced into committing illegal acts. Brian Asante initially denied all charges of child exploitation, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The jury did not take long before finding him guilty on all charges. Brian Asante was sentenced on the 18th of October 2024 to 13 years and 4 months imprisonment. The court also issued a new order for the prevention of child exploitation for 160 months, the first of its kind in the Midlands. His co-defendants were sentenced according to their roles. Simon McTaggart received 6 years and 11 months. Maurice Reed was sentenced to 6 years and 10 months. And James Carroll was given 2 years and 2 months for helping exploit children. Alicia Cox received a 20-month suspended sentence for moving children for drug distribution. Other co-defendants, including Emma Gill, Megan Lawrence, Dylan Swan, and Ghulam Izdani, were found guilty. Brian Asante and his group's conviction is an important win for the police in stopping County Lines operations. Detective Sergeant Gavin McGrath from the West Midlands Police's County Lines Task Force said it was breaking apart a well-developed and complex network that had been sending large amounts of drugs all over England. But the true success was the return of the children exploited by Asante's business. Brian Asante is behind bars, but the issues that allowed him to exploit children, poverty, family problems, the lack of social services, and the need for illegal drugs remain. Unless we address these root causes, there will always be another Brian Asante to exploit these vulnerable children. If this story made you reflect on the dark side of technology and child exploitation, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your comments below. Let us know how you feel about the case and what can be done to protect vulnerable kids. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more true crime stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one. It's 3:47 a.m. on a September morning in 2024. The radar screen at West Cornwall Sea Observatory displays a single dot crossing the darkness. Within a few minutes, that dot would initiate the largest ever drug bust in recent UK history. A 28-mile high-speed pursuit that ended with £18 million worth of cocaine on the seabed. It's no typical crime drama. There were no shots fired and no assaults. Just 3 men on a speedboat who believed they couldn't be caught. Before we take a closer examination of this action-packed pursuit, please press that subscribe button so you don't miss more terrific stories like this one. The entire episode started early on the morning of September 13th, 2024. Border Force officers were carrying out routine checks on vessels along the coast of Newquay, Cornwall. They noticed one vessel in particular, a rigid-hulled inflatable vessel, or a RIB for short. RIBs are lightweight, fast, and can navigate shallow waters, making them perfectly suited for clandestine use along the coast. The officers noticed the RIB acting suspiciously, meaning it was likely engaged in criminal activity rather than normal boat traffic. Intelligence had revealed that the RIB had recently transferred goods from a larger ship into a smaller vessel. Drug trafficking organizations commonly utilize this tactic to remain concealed from standard ports. As the Border Force vessel approached the RIB to stop and inspect it, the crew of the RIB reacted instantly. Rather than comply with the officer's instructions to stop, the RIB took off, initiating a high-speed chase. This initiated a relentless 28-mile hunt through the open waters of the English Channel. In this fierce chase, the crew of the RIB went to great lengths to dispose of evidence. They began dumping big, heavy parcels into the water. Subsequently, it was found that the parcels contained pure cocaine. The Border Force officers, who were closely tailing them, closely observed these activities and gathered valuable evidence of the illegal shipment being discarded. The officers had not just set out to arrest the suspects, but also to retrieve what had been discarded, which consisted of huge quantities of Class A drugs. The pursuit lasted for hours, demonstrating the determination of both the smugglers to evade capture and the Border Force to apprehend them. The high-speed sea chase lasted for hours, eventually ending in a spectacular conclusion when the RIB, unable to shake off followers, crashed on Gwenver Beach. The remote beach near Penzance in Cornwall was the unexpected end to the sea chase. The impact of the grounding brought the vessel to an immediate and jarring halt. The 3 people aboard the RIB were Peter Williams, Scott Johnston, and Edwin Yahir Tabora Baka. They tried to escape on foot. Their attempt to flee across the beach was swiftly thwarted. Border Force officers, who had followed closely throughout the chase, quickly caught up with all 3 suspects on the beach and detained them at the crash scene. The rapid apprehension prevented any further attempts to dispose of evidence or evade capture. Following the arrest, quick action was taken to recover the abandoned cargo. Border Force, supported by specialist agencies, carried out a thorough recovery operation in the seas around the area and along the coastline. The operation successfully recovered 6 large bales that had been abandoned in the sea during the chase. These bales contained approximately 230 kilograms of cocaine with a high illegal value and damage potential. The street value of this recovered shipment was estimated at £18.4 million. This significant recovery was a blow to the illegal drug supply chain targeted at the UK market, preventing a large quantity of drugs from reaching communities and causing social and economic damage. The recovery operation was crucial to gathering evidence to support prosecution. The magnitude and complexity of the operation necessitated that the case be referred to the National Crime Agency as a priority. The National Crime Agency is known as the UK's primary law enforcement agency for serious and organised crime, and they conducted a thorough investigation. They aimed to identify and apprehend all the people involved in the smuggling operation, not just the 3 men who were first arrested on Gwenver Beach. The National Crime Agency employed a variety of methods for their investigation, combining cutting-edge digital forensic methods with tactics that have been used for centuries. The National Crime Agency went through enormous amounts of data. They tracked CCTV footage in various coastal locations to chart movements and interactions, reviewed call data to map communication patterns and contacts, and intercepted and decrypted encrypted mobile messages. The in-depth investigation unveiled a highly organized criminal network behind the entire operation, from organizational and logistical planning at the outset to the failed distribution of cocaine. As more evidence accumulated, it became possible to pinpoint 4 other key figures whose roles indicated just how extensive and sophisticated the network was. Alex Fowley oversaw the logistics. He made the bookings for the rib used on the smuggling trip that eventually crashed. Audio recordings obtained from his phone weeks after the September 13th raid indicated he was still eager to arrange more drug pickups out at sea. In the recordings, he discussed stockpiling up to a ton of drugs and claiming there was zero risk attached to it. The conversations indicated he was still set on drug trafficking, despite the initial arrests and seizure, highlighting the audacity of the criminal network. Bobby Pierce worked on the team on the Cornish coast. His role was to intercept the rib and help deliver the cocaine after it landed on shore, indicating a prearranged meeting point. Michael May, similar to Pierce, was another integral part of the onshore team. His involvement cantered on the coordination and reception of the cocaine once it was brought ashore, ensuring its onward movement into the distribution network. His presence was crucial for the successful land-based logistics of the operation. Terry Willis was also on the coast to collect the drugs. Police raided his home during the investigation and discovered a revolver and ammunition, which earned him additional charges of money laundering and firearm possession. This discovery indicated that he was ready to use force and implied that he was more deeply involved in organized crime than merely drug smuggling. These individuals were tracked using a high-level network of communication patterns, financial transactions, and physical travel, all of which were carefully mapped and analyzed by the National Crime Agency. The investigation demonstrated that this was a well-organized criminal enterprise with multiple parties, all of which had different functions in the drug importation scheme, from procurement to distribution. The legal proceedings against the 7 men began with their initial court appearances. Like most complex criminal cases, all 7 men initially pleaded not guilty, aiming to challenge the prosecution's evidence. Edwin Yahir Tabora Baka, who was one of the 3 men detained on the boat, insisted he was an innocent bystander. He insisted he was a tourist who had accepted an unsolicited invitation from Peter Williams and Scott Johnston to go fishing. This assertion, however, was clearly and forcefully countered by undeniable evidence on his phone. This evidence, which included messages detailing the criminal activities of the group, and more so, a photo of the cocaine shipment on the boat, was crucial in breaking down his defense, demonstrating that he was a willing participant and aware. As the prosecution presented its case, the evidence was clear for several defendants. Faced with the solid and well-organized evidence from the investigation, 5 of the 7 men later pleaded guilty. They pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A drugs. One of the men was Terry Willis, whose guilty plea also involved additional charges of money laundering and possession of a firearm, as a weapon and ammunition were discovered at his residence during the investigation by the National Crime Agency. His plea showed how dangerous the crime enterprise was and his stronger connections to organized crime. However, 2 of the key defendants, Michael May and Scott Johnston, maintained their not guilty pleas. Their case proceeded to a full trial at Truro Crown Court. The 2-week trial saw the prosecution show all the evidence gathered by both the National Crime Agency and Border Force with great care. The evidence included detailed descriptions of the 28-mile sea chase, the forensic analysis proving the high purity of the seized cocaine, extensive mobile phone records, intercepted audio messages, and expert evidence regarding the careful planning involved in the smuggling operation. The court heard how these men were involved in a planned and dangerous enterprise for the potential large financial gain from the drug importation and how their actions posed a direct threat to public safety. On June 23, 2025, the jury delivered their verdict. Michael May and Scott Johnston were convicted of conspiracy to bring Class A drugs into the country. The verdict marked the conclusion of the trial of all 7 defendants. All the convicted defendants were held in custody, pending their sentencing. The sentencing hearing for all 7 men will be conducted at Truro Crown Court on August 1, 2025, when the full extent of their legal punishments will be determined. The seizure of the £18.4 million cocaine shipment and the subsequent convictions are a major blow to organised crime. The success of the cooperation between the National Crime Agency and the UK Border Force has been key in demonstrating effective collaboration. This operation is a clear message to criminal groups that smuggling will be met with effective and coordinated law enforcement action. What are your thoughts on this daring drug smuggling operation? Do you think the authorities' swift action was enough to deter future attempts? Leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. In August 2018, a careless video put the seal on a £20 million cocaine empire, one of the UK's biggest criminal operations. The story behind this huge drug bust is more than just the headlines. This is the actual account of how one moment of arrogance brought down a multi-million-pound network that spanned from the streets of Warrington to the heights of organised crime. August 2nd, 2018 will be a date etched in British crime history. 2 vehicles travelling north on the M6 motorway were set to be the location where the UK's biggest land-based drug seizure was made. One of them contained close to 200 kilograms of pure cocaine, worth £20 million hidden under a false floor. The operation that resulted in the record-breaking drug seizure had taken years to plan, but everything changed due to one careless video. The empire that lay behind this activity was secretly built in Warrington, a town that seemed to have ordinary businesses, car rental centres, and quiet family streets. But behind the scenes, 3 connected criminal organisations were in operation together, running the production, distribution, and sale of substantial quantities of cocaine. At the heart of this network were 4 dominant players: Jamie Oldroyd, Jamie Simpson, and the Tobin brothers, Alan and John. Jamie Oldroyd ran what seemed to be a legitimate car rental business, but it was a front for his cocaine operation. Oldroyd had everything in place: the warehouses, the couriers, and the routes throughout northwest England. His operation was well established, with all the necessary systems in place to prevent discretion. He rented properties under aliases, regularly changed vehicles, and used disposable phones. He stayed out of serious trouble by not getting too involved in the actual enterprise. Meanwhile, Oldroyd's operation wasn't the only one running in secrecy. The true power behind the network came from the Tobin brothers. Alan and John Tobin were at the heart of the operation. They controlled the flow of cocaine into the UK, ensuring that tons of drugs were transported across the country with military precision. The Tobins relied on encrypted communication devices and trusted couriers to ensure their shipments ran smoothly. Jamie Simpson operated the drug business. His operation was quieter and more organized. Simpson's drivers transported drugs across the nation without being detected. Simpson appeared to be a regular guy to the world, but behind the scenes, he oversaw the constant flow of quality cocaine from the streets to everywhere in the UK. Both Oldroyd and Simpson had perfected their roles in the drug empire, but they were not the only ones making the operation run. The Tobin brothers provided the much-needed supply chain. Without them, the cocaine that powered Oldroyd and Simpson's operations would have dried up overnight. The Tobins didn't rely on street-level deals. They operated with wholesale shipments worth millions. The Tobin brothers were the individuals who brought substantial amounts of cocaine into the UK from Europe in an organized fashion. With satellite phones, trusted couriers, and vehicles equipped with secret compartments, the Tobins made their operations smooth and profitable. These years went by, and the network expanded in secret. But the more money they made, the more arrogant they became. This arrogance would be their downfall. In the mix of this criminal operation was Robbie Broughton, an enforcer for the Tobins. Broughton, a former MMA fighter known as the Bear, was brought in to enforce debts and ensure that those who owed money paid up. Standing over 6 feet tall and weighing close to 18 stone, Broughton made sure the Tobins' business was protected and that no one stood in their way. It was in the spring of 2018 that Jamie Oldroyd and Taulant Paja, his best friend in the group, created a video that would unknowingly alter the fate of their whole crime gang. The video, taken at a secluded spot in Gorse Covert, was a celebration of their achievement. It captured mountains of cash, along with high-end watches and other symbols of success. There was background laughter as the two men enjoyed the fruits of their wrongdoing. They thought it was a private moment. The video revealed their riches, but also a careless mistake that disclosed more than their present-day spending. Oldroyd and Tallant's faces were visible, along with the location where the video was recorded. It was more than a video of their wealth. It was a glimpse of the hidden life they had worked so hard to conceal. The video had a lot of specific details, and law enforcement could now match faces to known criminals, track their whereabouts, and assess the scope of their operation. The tone of the video showed that Oldroyd and his associates thought they could not be caught, believing they were above the law. To detectives, this video was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. It provided them with solid evidence, confirming their suspicions and giving them the missing piece in their case. It was the first sign of an empire founded on secrecy and secret compartments, marking the beginning of the end for this complex criminal syndicate. By the spring of 2018, the Cheshire Police had initiated Operation Dreadnought, an undercover operation against the expanding drug operation of Jamie Oldroyd and Jamie Simpson. This operation would continue for more than 14 months and involve numerous law enforcement agencies collaborating to break down the operation. Already, at this point, the police had been gathering good intelligence on Oldroyd's and Simpson's operations, tracking them across the country. They had the main players, but they also realized that every move they made needed to be cautious. This would not be an easy bust. The authorities also employed several tactics to observe and gather intelligence to support their case. They employed undercover officers to monitor well-established safe houses, namely those leased by Oldroyd and his associates under fake names. These safe houses were hub locations in the network, where drugs were stored and sent out from many ordinary locations. Moreover, the police began to observe couriers who regularly traveled long distances across the UK, often with high amounts of money or drugs. These journeys routinely extended hundreds of miles, from the northwest to London and other major cities. Police were also listening in on phone calls. They were recording conversations and intercepting secret messages, revealing the extent of the network's connection to crime. Tracking money showed strange banking activity, which pointed directly to the money laundering that supported the drug business. But the real change came when the video surfaced. The video, produced by Oldroyd and Tallant, generated interest. It provided investigators with clear evidence, locations, and a clearer sense of how large and ambitious the operation was. What had appeared to be isolated crimes now seemed to be part of an even larger global network. On the evening of the 2nd of August, 2018, 4 major members of a cocaine trafficking gang set out on a crucial task. The task was to pick up a huge shipment of cocaine that had been illegally brought into the UK through the English Channel. The cocaine, which was of European origin, had already been processed and was ready for sale. The team, comprising experienced agents Andrew Daniels, Claire Smith, Dean Brettle, and their leader Jamie Simpson, travelled south to Rochester to collect the shipment. As soon as they had left Kent, they had the police following them. The operation had been in preparation for months. Without the criminals knowing, a police helicopter was following them, carefully documenting all turns or changes of direction. Several unmarked police vehicles were following them on the roads at a safe distance, tracing their route. As the convoy headed north on the M6, the police were in position. They had one task: catch the shipment before it reached its destination. As the convoy approached Junction 19, close to Knutsford, the police closed in. The road was soon shut down, and dozens of police cars surrounded the convoy in every direction. Escape was out of the question. At exactly 8:31 p.m., the police cars closed in on the convoy. The officers immediately arrested the 4 men in the convoy. The tension grew around the van as it was being searched. In the van, the officers discovered the 186 kilograms of high-purity cocaine, neatly packaged in blocks, ready for distribution. This was one of the biggest land-based drug seizure in history. For the criminals, the operation was finished. The police had successfully shut down one of the most sophisticated drug-dealing operations in the UK, ending years of illegal activity. The news of the £20 million cocaine seizure spread like wildfire, reaching the criminals and the police within hours. For the criminals, the scale of the seizure meant only one thing. Their empire was going to come crashing down. Panic broke out. The huge network, which had been operating in secret for so long, was now exposed, and its members knew they were finished. Immediately, the police initiated a series of coordinated raids at several locations. They broke into safe houses, stash houses, and other significant locations associated with Oldroyd and Simpson's operation. With every raid, more drugs and large amounts of money were seized. Proof of the criminal venture accumulated quickly. Oldroyd's operation, which had been so secretive and effective, started to disintegrate. One after another, significant members were taken into custody, including Oldroyd himself. The trials of those involved in the huge cocaine operation were held at Liverpool Crown Court. There, the prosecutors showed all the details about the criminal plan. For weeks, the court saw clear evidence gathered over several months. They showed the surveillance footage, the calls, and the data from the raids, which clearly explained how the criminal gang worked. The enormous size of the operation, spanning from the UK to Europe, was evident. Jamie Oldroyd, the ground operations leader, received a 14-year and 3-month prison sentence. Jamie Simpson, his co-conspirator, who arranged the logistics and transportation, received an 11-year and 6-month sentence. Robbie Broughton received an 8-year and 6-month sentence. The rest of the network, comprising of couriers, stash house operators, and street-level sellers, received varying sentences, ranging from 3 to 9 years, depending on the importance of their role in the illegal network. The Tobin brothers, John and Alan, were the brains behind the crime operation and were the major cocaine dealers. They were key players behind the operation's success, importing and selling massive amounts of drugs. Alan Tobin was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and John Tobin was sentenced to 19 years and 8 months. Through these convictions, the main criminals behind one of the largest drug-running operations in the UK were brought to justice. Oldroyd's cocaine empire fell apart because of pride, careless actions, and one foolish video. The operation, which used to run smoothly, broke down very quickly. The investigation, the arrests, and the trials ended one of the biggest drug trafficking operations the UK had ever experienced. If you enjoyed this crime story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to know which part you believe truly changed the destiny of this drug empire. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Behind the sleepy streets of Wiltshire, a hidden empire was quietly expanding, one that would go undetected for nearly 5 years. 2 brothers, Warren and Kelroy Allison, operated one of the UK's most sophisticated drug smuggling networks. They believed they were above the law. They lived in extravagance, owned luxury cars, and felt powerful, believing they could slip through the cracks of justice. But with the empire came the weight of their illegal businesses, and soon, all they had built came crashing down. This is the true story of the Allison brothers, their rise to power, their clever strategies, and the dramatic way in which they were brought to justice. Warren and Kelroy Allison were not born into rich or influential families. They lived in the charming town of Wiltshire, but had bigger dreams than many of their peers. Rather than pursuing regular jobs, they became fascinated by crime syndicates, where there was a lot of money to be made, and power came through control and lying. By early 2010, they had entered the drug business, but not in the typical way. They didn't begin with small street-level sales. They did it as a business, being careful to establish their contacts, sources of supply, and messengers. Over time, their operation grew, and within a few years, it was making millions of pounds on the sale of high-grade cocaine. The brothers didn't want to be small-time criminals. They wanted to run everything from the shadows without bringing attention to themselves. They were not there to be caught. They were there to make money quietly. In 2016, they made their first big move. They acquired massive amounts of cocaine from Albanian dealers who had strong links to global drug networks. The Allisons quickly developed a steady supply of drugs. Their network covered the southwest of England, with major distribution points in towns such as Swindon, Bristol, and Liverpool. They were able to stay below the radar for years thanks to smart planning and secretive methods. All was well structured, from transportation to money matters, so it appeared as if they were simply running a real business. Warren and Kelroy Allison constructed a massive and sophisticated business, one that lasted for many years and dealt in millions of pounds worth of cocaine in southwest England. However, it wasn't a typical crime group. It was a well-planned, highly organized crime group that worked like a corporate firm, not a street drugs gang. They knew they had to be one step ahead of the police, so they employed specialized communication tools to stay ahead of them. Using services such as EncroChat and Sky ECC, they organized shipments, negotiated with suppliers, and conducted their deals remotely, all while keeping their business out of the police's sight. Warren, the older brother, managed the business aspect of their operation. He negotiated with suppliers and buyers and organized that they import a lot of cocaine from overseas suppliers, particularly from Albania. Kelroy, his younger brother, managed the movement, ensuring the drugs were transported and stored safely. They operated their illegal business just like legitimate business owners, taking care to select associates who filled important roles. They employed trusted couriers, such as Richard Cowell, to transport large quantities of cocaine and money throughout the UK. Cowell's car was modified to hide the drugs, so he could travel across different counties without raising any red flags. His position played a crucial role in keeping their operation efficient, ensuring that deliveries reached their destinations without issues. He operated EncroChat to communicate under the handle South Kangaroo, working not only for the Allisons, but also for other local crime gangs. Warren's girlfriend, Portia Densley, played a crucial role in managing the operation's finances. She arranged the transfer of large amounts of money, ensuring it was hidden through various channels so that it was never traceable to the police. Without her, the financial workings of the Allisons would have been at a high risk of detection. Her careful management of the operation's finances contributed significantly to the business's success. The operation of the Allisons was not so much about logistics or finance. It was built on trust and loyalty. Warren's cousin, Bristol's Anthony Burke, handled and received deliveries of cocaine. Through the use of family connections, it ensured loyalty and trust among the group, which enabled the brothers to exert control over their extensive distribution network. The Allisons relied heavily on their Albanian suppliers, who provided them with large amounts of cocaine. The suppliers were crucial to the brothers in providing them with an uninterrupted supply of quality drugs, which allowed the brothers to capitalize on the growing demand in the UK. The link with the Albanian crime networks helped the Allisons grow their operation and connect with even more people. By 2020, the Allison brothers lived a life that most people could only dream of. Warren showed off his newfound riches with luxury vehicles such as Lamborghinis, Audis, and Mercedes. To outsiders, the brothers appeared to be two prosperous gentlemen enjoying their success. But this was far from the truth. These cars were not signs of hard work. They were signs of their criminal success. The Allisons used their wealthy lifestyle as a cover. Their flashy displays of wealth served two purposes. They made them appear successful entrepreneurs, and they deterred people from questioning how they were making their money. But behind the glamour and designer clothes was a gigantic drug empire that was growing every month. But the wealthier they became, the more arrogant they got. They didn't care that people saw them. They wanted everyone to think they were untouchable. Little did they know flaunting their fortune was drawing the attention of the authorities. The police began to notice unusual things in the area, including the flashy displays of wealth in places where they weren't expected. It was only a matter of time before their empire would be exposed. It all started to fall apart in June 2020. French officials successfully shut down a secret communications system called EncroChat, which was being used by criminals to coordinate their activities. It was a game changer. The National Crime Agency could now monitor the encrypted messages being sent by the Allisons and their gang. The brothers had thought for years that they were safe, using these encrypted phones to stay ahead of the police. Now, those same phones were responsible for their downfall. As investigators examined the intercepted messages, they uncovered a huge stash of evidence. The encrypted messages revealed everything about the Allisons' business, cocaine deals, and money laundering methods. The authorities now had what they needed to make their move. But it didn't happen overnight. Weeks of secret surveillance were needed to pull all the pieces together. The detectives kept track of the main players, read the encrypted messages, and gathered intelligence from within the community. Slowly, the net began to close around the Allisons. In November 2020, a secret police operation by the Wiltshire Police Serious Organised Crime Unit led to a major drug bust, revealing a well-organised cocaine smuggling network across the UK. The operation was focused on the Allison brothers, Warren and Kelroy, and their associates, who had been smuggling cocaine since at least 2016. The National Crime Agency assisted by breaking the encrypted communications, which revealed the scale of the operation. On the 3rd of November 2020, police seized a 4-kilogram batch of cocaine worth between £300,000 and £400,000. The drugs were found hidden in a shopping bag at the home of Anthony Burke, the Allisons' cousin in Bristol, and he was arrested on the spot. This was the beginning of the end for the Allisons' multi-million-pound drug empire. More investigations identified and detained the main suppliers, Albanians Pieter Pisha and Lydian Hoxha. They attempted to flee, but were caught. In 2021, the Chippenham Neighbourhood Policing Team executed a warrant at Kelroy Allison's home. During the search, they found his mobile phones, which contained records of drug transactions and proof of drug trafficking dating back to January 2016. The operation uncovered that the Allison brothers were running a large drug trafficking network. They were importing and distributing cocaine in southwest England. The investigation also showed how encrypted communication platforms like EncroChat and Sky ECC helped facilitate secret drug trades. Breaking up this network was a significant achievement for law enforcement in the fight against organized drug trafficking in the UK. In late 2024, the trial of the Allison brothers and their organization began, marking a major milestone in the UK's fight against organized drug dealing. The case was built strongly by the prosecution, incorporating painstakingly gathered evidence from intercepted conversations, phone call history, CCTV footage, and large-scale raids in Wiltshire, Bristol, and Liverpool. These raids yielded not only drugs and money, but also important records on Kelroy Allison's mobile phones, documenting criminal activity dating back to 2016. This evidence showed a well-organized criminal enterprise that had operated under the radar for almost 5 years. The defense attempted to discredit the prosecution's case by asserting that the intercepted messages were about imitation clothes rather than drugs. The jury found this argument unconvincing, as there was clear and strong evidence presented. The multi-week trial concluded with guilty convictions for all 8 individuals involved in the conspiracy to supply cocaine. The court sentenced the defendants on February 6, 2025. The main leader, Warren Allison, got 23 years for 2 counts of conspiring to supply cocaine. His brother, Kelroy Allison, got 16.5 years for his part in the operation. Richard Cowell, who carried large amounts of drugs and money, got 9 years. Portia Densley, Warren's girlfriend, the gang's financial manager, got 8 years for participating in money laundering and drug activities. Anthony Burke, Warren's cousin, who received cocaine deliveries in Bristol, got 8 years. Ledian Hoxha and Pshita Pisha, two of Albania's main suppliers, received 7 years and 4 months and 6 years and 8 months, respectively. Enid Aliko, who was involved in the criminal activities, received a 4-year sentence. Altogether, the sentences totaled 82 years behind bars, underscoring the gravity of the crimes and serving as a warning to others who may be involved in similar activities. The case demonstrated just how effective new investigative techniques have been in dismantling sophisticated criminal groups, including the monitoring of encrypted communications. The downfall of the Allison brothers' cocaine business had a significant effect. Their business was one of the most organized drug trafficking operations in the UK. It spanned many counties, had global suppliers, and utilized secret messages to avoid detection. Taking down this business demonstrated that no one, no matter how influential, was above being caught. The legal victory was more than just a win. It was a wake-up call for UK communities. The Allison brothers' enterprise was operating right under the public's nose. Warren and Kelroy Allison built a cocaine empire that thrived and eventually collapsed. Their story is one of ambition, dishonesty, and the cost of a life of crime. They thought they were untouchable, but their overconfidence and reliance on technology ultimately led to their downfall. What happened to their empire demonstrates that, no matter how clever or secretive a criminal enterprise may be, justice always catches up in the end. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to hit the subscribe button for more true crime stories. We love hearing from you, so don't forget to leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Christmas Eve, 2019, a time of warmth, family, and festive cheer. But on a peaceful Battersea Street in South London, the festive atmosphere was shattered by a brutal act of violence. Flama Bakiri, a 36-year-old father of 2, was shot at his front door in front of his screaming wife and their terrified 2-year-old son. This was no spontaneous act of violence. It was a carefully planned assassination, a professional hit that showed the brutal extent of organized crime's reach across borders. Bakiri's murder was more than just a random act of violence. It was a dangerous warning, a fight for control in a game of revenge between criminal groups that had been building for months. The investigation that followed would uncover a matrix of international drug trafficking, rivalries, and a ruthless hitman with a series of calculated moves and one fatal mistake. This is the story of Flama Bakiri, a victim of an international criminal network, and Anis Hemesi, the hired killer. Please subscribe now as we dive deeper into this story. Flama Bakiri was a Swedish citizen born in Albania. He presented himself to the public as a legitimate businessman in the music industry. But that was just part of the story. Bakiri was a high-profile figurehead in an enormous, intricate global drug trafficking organization. His direct association with the illegal drug trade went back at least as early as 2007, when he was one of the top members of a dominant criminal organization commanded by Daniel Petrovsky, a notorious character in the Swedish organized crime scene. Bakiri's criminal empire wasn't just limited to Sweden. It extended throughout Europe, helping smuggle large amounts of drugs and making huge profits. He was also said to have bought large properties, such as his £1.7 million Battersea property, which he purchased in his wife's name in 2017. This was believed to be a way of keeping himself separated from his criminal life. Nevertheless, Despite his efforts to keep a low profile, Bakiri's high-risk lifestyle and the fact that he was a central figure in Petrovsky's gang made him a prime target in the deadly game of international organized crime. The killing of Flama Bakiri wasn't a random act, but the climax of a long and bitter struggle between his organization and a competing crime group. It was a fight for control over valuable drug routes and territories. The competition was so intense that it spanned multiple countries, rooted in the violent battles for power in the European underworld. Anis Hemisi was a 24-year-old Swedish kickboxer. Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb described him as a gun for hire, who was involved in international crime at its most brutal. Hemisi had the cold, professional skill needed to carry out such a mission. Flama Bakiri's assassination wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act, but a well-planned operation that had been in the works for as long as 6 months before the Christmas Eve killing. Hemisi had practiced extensively for the assassination. He arrived in London on December the 20th, 2019, just 4 days before the killing. His primary objective was to closely watch Bakiri's activities and his home in Battersea. To do so without raising suspicion, Hemisi often used several disguises. He was often seen cycling, blending himself in with the general public, or wearing bright work gear, with a litter picker and a black bin bag pretending to be a street cleaner. These disguises enabled him to study Bakiri's routines to determine the best time to strike. A network of fellow accomplices helped his reconnaissance. Estevan Pino Munizaga was the head of logistics. He made a short 14-hour trip to London, leasing a flat in Oyster Wharf near Bakiri's house that would be Hemisi's base. He also made a trip to Bakiri's house to check out the layout and bought the bike Hemisi would use for surveillance. An additional accomplice bought the litter picker, completing Hemisi's disguise as a street cleaner. Despite careful planning, a small but significant disruption occurred during Hemisi's surveillance. His frequent sightings and strange activity as a street sweeper caught the attention of a resident, Jeremy Lyons. Lyons, becoming suspicious, interrupted Hemisi, instructing him to go away. This unexpected encounter forced Hemisi to abandon his initial bike and disguise. Unfazed, Hemisi soon bought a new bike, which he strategically left on the Thames path, allowing for a quick escape route after the proposed assassination. This determination reflected Hemisi's professionalism and his resolve to carry out his mission despite the small disruption. On Christmas Eve night, the months of planning were turned into a night of complete horror. Flama Bakiri, his wife Deborah Krasniki, and their 2-year-old son were walking back home, but the festive spirit of the night was brutally destroyed. Anis Hemisi, who waited in the shadows, stepped out of the darkness. He did not hesitate. He started shooting 10 times, 8 bullets hitting Bakiri from behind. The attack was swift, vicious, and executed with a chilling precision. Bakiri's wife screamed in terror, attempting to shield their small child from the horrific violence in front of them. The immediate aftermath was one of shock, horror, and serious trauma, a stark contrast to the festive Christmas joy that had hung in the air seconds earlier. The killing was not simply an act of violence. It was a public execution designed to deliver a powerful and chilling message to Bakiri's friends and rivals in the criminal underworld. After the terrible killing, Anis Hemisi quickly started his escape plan. He fled the scene with calculated speed, heading to the spare bike he had placed on the Thames path. His actions were deliberate, intended to distance him from the crime scene and minimize the chances of being caught immediately. In the early morning of Christmas Day, just hours after the murder, Hemisi managed to leave the United Kingdom, flying to Copenhagen to avoid being caught. Despite careful planning and a quick exit, the criminals had left a discernible trail of evidence. The investigation, conducted by the Metropolitan Police, demonstrated the capabilities of modern forensic science and the value it brings to police forces globally in terms of collaboration. Detectives thoroughly gathered and analysed a vast quantity of evidence, much of it being London's extensive CCTV system. The footage was extremely beneficial, and investigators were able to painstakingly reconstruct Hemisi's activity before and after the murder, from when he entered the UK to when he departed. Digital forensics also came into play. Phone records, travel records, and other electronic evidence were analysed to create connections between Hemisi and his accomplices. A seemingly minor oversight by Hemisi, a ripped-up plane ticket with his name on it, found by detectives, became a significant piece of evidence, directly linking him to his escape route and providing a crucial lead for the investigators. Two other accomplices made it more difficult for the gang of criminals to cover their tracks. Clifford Rollox and Claude Isaac Castor were instructed to clean and destroy evidence from the Oyster Wharf flat Hemisi used as his hideout. Their effort at disposing of key items, including the murder weapon, fell short. Rollox and Castor were subsequently convicted of attempting to interfere with justice, and each received a 3-year prison sentence. Their involvement, though intended to obscure the truth, ultimately contributed to the overwhelming body of evidence that led to the convictions. The Metropolitan Police mounted a large and detailed investigation into Flamur Bakiri's murder. The sheer scale of the crime, with its many international elements and a complex network of organized criminals, presented numerous challenges. The leader of the investigation, Jamie Stevenson, described it as one of the most complex and far-reaching investigations undertaken by the Specialist Crime Command in years. Police carefully examined thousands of hours of CCTV footage to track Hemisi's movement within London. They pieced together his surveillance activity, disguises, and escape routes. They examined money transfers of the plotters, which uncovered the money being provided for the assassination. Law enforcement agencies in Europe needed to work together, sharing information and resources to identify criminals. This cooperation across borders was essential because the Bakiri crime network crossed borders and the assassins were from various locations. The abandoned bike and the abandoned street cleaner disguise, though meant to deceive the investigators, yielded useful forensic evidence. The objects were thoroughly examined for fingerprints, DNA, and other traces of evidence, further tightening the case against Hemisi. The discovery of the torn plane ticket, which had initially seemed like a minor piece of information, was a turning point, linking Hemisi directly to his journey to Copenhagen and providing clear evidence of his involvement. Anis Hemisi's global evasion eventually came to an end. He was arrested upon his return from a holiday in Thailand, a major victory for the investigation team. His arrest was the turning point in the case, bringing the primary perpetrator of the assassination into custody and opening the way for the following legal process. The thorough police investigation ensured that a solid case was presented against all the criminals. Anis Hemisi and his co-defendants' trial at Southwark Crown Court was lengthy and complicated, lasting 2 months and exposing the full extent of the carefully plotted murder. The prosecution, headed by Louise Attrill for the Crown Prosecution Service, presented a solid and circumstantial case detailing the careful planning, the cold-blooded murder, and the attempts at covering up the crime. The court heard of Bakiri's murder being the culmination of a revenge rivalry between two very significant crime groups, an international murder which required careful planning and involved a gang of criminals who hired a team to carry out this violent and brutal crime. The jury gave the verdict on February the 11th, 2022. Anis Hemisi was guilty of murder and possession of a weapon. He was sentenced to life to serve at least 35 years, ensuring he would spend the majority of his life behind bars for his role in the murder. The court also took into account the accomplices of Hemisi. Estevan Pino Munizaga, while acquitted of murder, was found guilty of manslaughter since he was heavily involved in plotting and organizing the hit. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with 2/3 of the sentence to be served. 2 other Swedish citizens, Tobias Andersson and Bauer Kara, who were part of the broader conspiracy, were acquitted of all charges. The judge highlighted the deeper history of the gang conflict and referred to a significant event that had occurred previously. Only months before Bakiri was killed, one of his close friends had been attacked in Malmö, Sweden. The assault resulted in the cold-blooded murder of his child's mother. This was the background that accounted for the growing violence and personal grudges behind the ongoing feud, illustrating how far these criminal organizations went to extend power and get revenge. The 2019 Christmas Eve murder of Flamur Bakiri is a sobering and somber reminder of the far-reaching influence and brutal strength of international organized crime. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on the rise of crime. Please don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. A young man's body across a deserted road, blood seeping into the icy earth of Staffordshire. 5 shots shatter the silent night, marking a brutal killing. This is Kevin Nunes, a 20-year-old footballer dreaming of Premier League success, now a victim of Wolverhampton's Gangland war. On September 19, 2002, in Pattingham, his murderers vanished, leaving a mystery with betrayal, drugs, and a police scandal that ruined justice. Who took him to his death? How does the case remain unsolved 23 years later? And how does a bright star fall so far? This video is a journey through a realm of dreams, crime, and system failures, keeping you guessing until the final shock. Kevin Nunes steps off a plane in the UK, a curious Jamaican boy. It's the late 1990s, and he lands in Whitmore Reens, a rough part of Wolverhampton. The streets are buzzing. Children kick a ball around in alleys, reggae music pounds from corner shops, but danger lurks nearby. Poverty has a grip, and gangs prey on young men with offers of money and respect. Kevin, though, shines. His pace and ball control impress coaches. By 16, he was in the youth ranks of Tottenham Hotspur and Leyton Orient, top clubs in England. He played for Stafford Rangers, a West Midlands semi-pro outfit, by 2001, earning praise for his hard work. Teammates recall him lingering after training, practicing free kicks under the floodlights, dreaming of full houses. His mother, a tough immigrant, tells him to keep his eyes on the prize. But the streets of Whitmore Reens are more alluring. Gang recruiters wave wads of cash, attempting to persuade even the most resolute. By the age of 19, Kevin's football boots gather dust as he steps into a darker game. Wolverhampton in 2002 was gripped by gang violence. Heroin and crack cocaine drive a broad black market. The most important target is the Aberdeen Run, a route for drugs to Scotland. Aberdeen has little supply, and cocaine is twice as expensive as the overstocked West Midlands. Trains are used by couriers such as Kevin, concealing drugs in rucksacks and getting £500 per trip, more than most earn in a month in Whitmore Reens. Allegedly, Kevin was working with the Night Express gang, a gang using the UK rail network for secret delivery. Each trip is dangerous through police raids or assaults from rivals such as Birmingham's Burger Bar Boys, a well-known gang travelling north. Kevin's job grows larger, selling kilos of cocaine per week. On that dreadful night, a date forever etched in the tragic history of Wolverhampton, Kevin Nunes was not playing football, scoring goals, or basking in the adoration of fans. He was in Pattingham, a small, peaceful village in South Staffordshire, just a short journey from bustling Wolverhampton. He was on Clive Road, a dark, narrow road lined by fields. It is 9:30 p.m, and the air is thick. The only sound is the car's engine. 4 men step out from the trees, their faces familiar contacts from the Wolverhampton underworld. Kevin gets out of his car, expecting a quick drug deal or brief talk. But before he knows what's happening, a hit to his head with a gun, blood dripping down his face. Dazed and confused, he stumbles. Then 5 gunshots echo through the night, each one hitting him in the back. Kevin falls to the ground. The attackers run off, disappearing into the night. His body, full of bullets and pain, was left in the road, a ghastly and horrible reminder of the brutal, cruel world he had chosen to enter. The discovery of Kevin Nunes's body sparked an extensive police investigation by Staffordshire Police. Staffordshire Police launched a massive investigation, one of the largest in its history. More than 180 officers sweep Pattingham, searching fields for bullet casings and tire tracks. They take thousands of statements from witnesses, following leads from Wolverhampton's estates to Jamaica. The international drug trade makes the search more difficult. There was huge pressure to solve this high-profile murder. For years, the case hung over the community like a big cloud, a constant reminder of the violence bubbling just beneath the surface. Then, 6 years to the day after the murder, in 2008, there was a breakthrough. 5 men were arrested and later convicted at Leicester Crown Court of Kevin Nunes murder. Antonio Christie, Levi Walker, Adam Joof, Michael Osborne and Owen Crooks were convicted and jailed for life. For Kevin Nunes's grieving family, it must have been a measure of justice, a moment of closure after years on tenterhooks of tormenting uncertainty and unanswered questions. Leanne Williams, Kevin's 18-year-old girlfriend, sits in the gallery with her hands together. Leanne met Kevin via a friend and was attracted to him because of his charm and passion for football, she said on the BBC. But the drama was not yet complete. The grounds for these convictions were, unknown to many, highly dubious, based on faulty procedures and system failures. Wolverhampton's underworld has a darker tale to tell. The early 2000s were bloody. Drive-by shootings rock Whitmore Rians, bullets shattering shop windows. Stabbings take Heath Town streets. Gangs like Bristol Crews dominate the drug trade in Aberdeen. Their crew spreads across the UK, smuggling crack cocaine into Scotland. Birmingham's Burger Bar Boys, responsible for the infamous New Year's shooting in 2003, extended into Wolverhampton, igniting turf wars. Kevin's murder follows the pattern. A message to enemies. Did he owe money? Did he disrespect someone? The hit was targeted, a message to be sent. In 2012, the case fell apart. London's Court of Appeal buzzes with news as defense lawyers uncover a scandal. The 247-page report by the Criminal Cases Review Commission uncovers police wrongdoing. Detectives partied with witnesses, drinking beer in pubs and dancing in clubs. The court calls it a serious miscarriage of justice. The key reason for this shocking reversal is a long list of errors by Staffordshire Police, particularly their huge failure to disclose vital evidence to the defense teams. The convictions of Joof, Walker, Christie, Crooks, and Osborne are overturned. After 4 years in prison, they are freed. The Independent Police Complaints Commission investigates 14 officers, but the majority of officers already have retired, evading punishment. This failure was not a minor mistake or a mere oversight. It was a violation of the law and created a significant gap in the integrity of the case. It was also a painful blow for the victim's family, who were again left in the dark and misery, their hopes of justice shattered. The ramifications of this case were widespread and hugely disturbing, going far beyond the courtroom and into the public sphere. Top police officers, who were part of the original poorly handled investigation, were officially cleared of wrongdoing by the Independent Police Complaints Commission, although the Court of Appeal did have a highly critical judgment. Even more controversially, it was revealed that one of the men originally accused, along with the 5 whose convictions were overturned, was already a convicted murderer in another case. This man, along with another, received hundreds of thousands of pounds in compensation from Staffordshire Police. The public revelation that money was being paid to a convicted murderer due to police errors caused widespread outrage and further eroded public confidence in the justice system. In 2019, Staffordshire Police reopened the case following a robust review by Merseyside Police. The 60 recommendations confirmed that the original investigation was in chaos. Evidence was lost and records were poorly maintained. Chief Constable Gareth Morgan addressed the press, apologizing for serious police mistakes. Detectives returned to Clive Road, re-interviewed witnesses, and examined phone records. They wanted to ensure the investigation was unbiased and viewed from a fresh perspective. There was hope that new evidence or a fresh eye could finally reveal the truth, bring the real offenders to justice. But then came the bad news. The new investigation, costing millions and featuring many individuals working tirelessly, failed. A prime suspect was identified, but the Crown Prosecution Service stated that there was not enough evidence to charge him. Nearly 2 decades had passed, and the original investigation had been mishandled. The complicated laws made it seem impossible to secure a trial. The case was stopped once again, and Kevin Nunes' murder officially remained unsolved, an open wound in the community and a reflection of the legacy of crime that could not be solved. The case remains open, with reviews every 2 years, but new leads disappear. Wolverhampton today is peaceful but scarred. Whitmore Reens sees fewer shootings, but drug deals continue in the shadows. Community projects, young people's clubs, boxing clubs, anti-gang programs act as counterbalances. Gangs, however, evolve, using social media to recruit. Kevin's case triggers calls for reform. The Merseyside Review and IPCC report expose police failures, including a failure to conceal evidence and a lack of accountability. The case file remains open, its pages turned yellow. Kevin's story is a warning about the drug trade, a lost footballer, a wrecked family, a damaged city. What will halt Wolverhampton's gang pandemic? Will justice prevail? Wolverhampton's drug wars continue, taking more lives. Staffordshire Police promise to crack the case, but the trail is ice cold. Kevin's murder exposes the price of crime and the breakdown of the system. Who murdered him? Why did justice fail him? Leave your feedback on the case of Kevin Nunes below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more true crime stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Imagine this. A street in an English town. An American woman wearing a hijab reaches a car and points a gun. But instead of firing, there is just a click. The gun malfunctions. This is no low-budget spy movie. This is the strange, true tale of Amy Betrow, an American graphic designer turned hit woman. Her target didn't just miss, she completely messed up, revealing a tale of revenge, error, and an international manhunt. How did a regular Wisconsin woman find herself miles from home, attempting to carry out an assassination that went drastically wrong? And why did a British father and son commission her in the first place? Join us as we dig out the staggering tale of the hit woman who blew it all up. Our story starts not with Amy Betrow, but with an escalating feud in Derby, England. The main players in the case are Mohammed Aslam, who was 56 when convicted, and his son Mohammed Nazir, 30. The son and father ran a business, but they had a violent confrontation with another family, which created a serious, long-standing grudge that caused a lot of trouble. There was a bloody brawl on July 21, 2018, at a clothing store owned by Aslat Mahmoud in Birmingham. The facts of the initial brawl have not been made public, but the outcome was clear. Aslam and Nazir were injured, the shop windows were broken, and the interior was reported to have been destroyed. It was no small brawl. It wounded their pride and could hurt their business. Rather than leaving it alone or suing them, Aslam and Nazir decided to take a much more radical path of revenge: murder. They needed someone to do the job, someone who could be denied. someone who could come and go, preferably someone from a distance. They needed a hitman, or rather, in this case, a hitwoman. This is where Amy Betro enters, and her past makes the story even stranger. Born in 1980 from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, she was no serious criminal or killer involved in shady activities. Public records and reports indicate she had a pretty ordinary life. She attended early childhood education at Mid-State Technical College in Wisconsin and graduated in 2005. She was an administrator for the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team. She was also reportedly a freelance graphic designer. Her last posts on social media indicated that she was having fun exploring the UK, attending festivals, and sightseeing, not someone preparing for such a horrible murder. How did this lady, who did not appear to have a history of violent crimes, come across Aslam and Nazir and agree to help them with her services for their revenge plan? The precise manner in which she was recruited remains unclear, but the prosecution outlined how Aslam and Nazir tracked her down and brought her over from the United States for this fatal assignment. Why her? Did she know them? Was she selected online? Was she financially struggling? These are questions left unanswered, which contribute to the intrigue of her participation. What is certain is that by late August 2019, Amy Betro was preparing to travel to the UK, not merely for a holiday, but allegedly for a contract killing. Betro also traveled from Chicago to the UK, arriving in August 2019. Detectives subsequently analyzed her social media activity at this point and showed all her travels. She wrote about traveling to London, attending the Transmission Festival at Crystal Palace, taking a boat trip along the River Thames, and even spoke about visiting her partner in crime in Manchester, a scary term now. She checked into hotels across the country, including Birmingham, Brighton, Derby, and Manchester. While she was telling everyone about her trips, the plan was still being put together behind the scenes. On the 6th of September 2019, the day before the planned attack, Mohammed Nazir and Mohammed Aslam traveled from their home in Derby to Birmingham. Nazir met Betro at a city centre hotel. Prosecutors allege that they spent over 2 hours in her room together, and in that time, even ordered food from Deliveroo. It was likely the last briefing, in which last-minute arrangements were made before attempting to murder Sikandar Ali the following day. The original target was Aslat Mahmoud, but at the last minute, they changed plans and went after his son, Sikandar Ali. Maybe because it was easier to follow his daily routine. Betro had already begun preparing for the plan. She purchased a Mercedes car using the fake name Becky Booth. Also, she contacted Sikandar Ali with a made-up story that she wanted to buy a Volkswagen Golf his family was selling. This provided her with a good reason to meet near his home, drawing him into the area. The setting was arranged for September 7th, 2019, in Acox Green, a suburb of Birmingham. Betro drove her Mercedes to the destination, waiting for her victim. To hide her identity, she wore a hijab. Sikandar Ali had driven up in his car alongside where Betro had been standing. Upon arriving, Betro got out of the Mercedes and left the driver's door open, ready to leave quickly. The prosecutor, Kevin Hegarty, explained that she walked calmly towards Sikandar Ali and pointed a gun at him at head height. This was where the plan went wrong. Ali had seen her and the gun. Betro had pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. The gun, aimed directly at Ali, jammed. In that split second of failure, Sikandar Ali was saved. He quickly reversed his car and hit the front bumper of Betro's Mercedes and quickly drove away. Betro remained there with her jammed gun. She abandoned the nearby Mercedes, likely hoping it would not be traced back to her or her superiors. Leaving the car behind was a big mistake that gave investigators an important clue. You would have expected that after such a monumental failure, the plan would have been abandoned. But Betro, instead of following orders from Aslam and Nazir, had her own plans. The next day, September 8th, she hired a taxi and was back in the neighborhood. This time she seemed to be aiming at Sikandar Ali's father, Aslat Mahmud. She went to his house and fired 3 shots at it. Luckily, no one was hurt in this second attack. But Betro didn't leave it at that. She reportedly followed up the shooting with a series of threatening text messages sent straight to Aslat Mahmud reading, "Stop playing hide and seek, and where are you hiding?" She then sent a more direct threat. "You want to rip me off? You want to be a drug kingpin? Go look at your house, I will show you. Watch your back, I will be shedding blood soon." With 2 failed attempts and a trail of evidence, including an abandoned car and threatening text messages, Betro's time in the UK was up. Just 2 days after the second attack, on September 10th, she boarded a flight back to Chicago. She had arrived as an alleged assassin for hire and left as a wanted person on the run, leaving chaos and a major police investigation. West Midlands police quickly started working on the case. The abandoned Mercedes was a key starting point. Forensics and vehicle tracking likely helped piece together Betro's movements. The threatening text messages sent to Aslat Mahmud provided direct evidence of the plot's intent. Investigators would have worked to identify the owner and driver of the Mercedes, which would have led them to Amy Betro, the American visitor. Most importantly, the police needed to prove that Betro was connected to the people who hired her. This link likely originated from reviewing communications, travel records, and the known reason for the attack. Mohammed Nazir made a big mistake that helped prove this connection. A few days after Betro flew back to the US, Nazir himself flew out to America. On his travel documents, he listed Amy Betro as his point of contact in the US. This was a significant piece of evidence connecting him directly to the suspected hitwoman shortly after the crime. Mohammed Nazir was arrested upon his return to the UK the following month, in October 2019. His father, Mohammed Aslam, was also arrested. The legal process started moving, although the suspected shooter, Amy Betro, stayed out of reach in the United States. The case eventually reached Birmingham Crown Court. The trial revealed the details of the plot. Prosecutors presented the evidence carefully: the history of the feud, the recruitment of Betro, her recorded travel and hotel stays, the eyewitness account of Sikandar Ali, the jammed gun, the abandoned Mercedes, the shots fired the next day, the threatening text messages, and Nazir's trip to the US listing Betro as his contact. The defense team tried to separate Aslam and Nazir from Betro's actions, but the series of proof was strong. In June 2024, the jury delivered its verdict. Mohammed Aslam and Mohammed Nazir were both found guilty of conspiracy to murder. Nazir faced additional charges. He was also found guilty of having a gun, interfering with justice, and bringing guns into the country illegally. This last charge related to a separate, complicated plan where Nazir allegedly tried to bring guns into the country and blame someone else for it. Aslam, the father, was cleared of the firearms charge, but convicted on the main conspiracy charge. Mohammed Nazir was sentenced to 32 years for conspiracy to murder, while Mohammed Aslam received a 10-year sentence. While Aslam and Nazir faced justice in the UK, Amy Betro remained a free woman, albeit one wanted internationally. For nearly 5 years after the botched hit, Betro seemingly evaded capture. Reports surfaced that she was communicating with friends back in her hometown, suggesting she wasn't living entirely off the grid. Then, in a dramatic turn of events in early July 2024, news broke that Amy Betro had finally been caught. However, she wasn't found in Wisconsin or anywhere else in the United States, but she was tracked down in Armenia. According to the police of the Republic of Armenia, Betro, now 44, was located and taken into custody on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. She was found in a rented apartment within a housing complex on the outskirts of the capital city, Yerevan. Armenian authorities stated she was wanted by UK law enforcement for conspiracy to commit murder and illegal possession of a firearm. British authorities organized her deportation, and she is now in Newhall Prison in Wakefield. In February 2025, Betro denied charges of conspiracy to murder, possessing a firearm, and importing ammunition between September 12th and October 23rd, 2019. Her trial is set for July 21st, 2025, at Birmingham Crown Court. In a bizarre twist, Sikandar Ali, the alleged victim, was convicted in a separate case of trafficking £500,000 worth of cocaine and borrowing a gun to deal drugs, and was given 9 years and 6 months behind bars after police investigated the drug kingpin threat from Betro. This tale, begun with a call in 2018, illustrates the pointlessness of revenge. A botched attack killed no one, but devastated lives on 2 continents. Aslam, Nazir, and Sikandar are behind bars, and Betro awaits a verdict. Share your thoughts on this amazing crime in the comments below, and subscribe for more exciting true crime stories. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.